Hey, what's up YouTube? We are back with another video. Today we are going to be discussing stratagems and how they are ranking currently with the ILLUMINATE threat on the horizon. We'll be going through all the stratagems in the game, ranking them in our tier list, talking about how they currently fit into the meta and just fun playstyles and so on and so forth, and what needs to be hopefully changed in the future, what's lacking behind. Just remember that obviously this tier list is in the perspective of a 4-player co-op highest difficulty kind of player, and how it would perform in those scenarios. I say this because sometimes people are more solo oriented, or they play in duos, or they play on lower difficulties, and something I may say might be like, that doesn't apply to me, you're dead wrong about this stratagem. Typically it has to do with you just playing a different difficulty or playing in a different party size, so I'm coming from that perspective, please keep in mind. All right, let's get into it. Starting off, we have the Orbital Gatling Barrage. Overall decent. I don't think it's like going to carry you through a mission, but because of the low cooldown and decent damage, and like fairly good against like the different objectives and so on and so forth on the ILLUMINATE front, from both a perspective of just dealing with like the occasional like UFO or dealing with like an ILLUMINATE drop. I think there's a lot of scenarios where like I think it could fit into an arsenal as like general ad clear, and also the spread on it seems to be decent enough to like fit inside a city street. So I do like bringing it. I'm not like over the moon with it, saying that like it's fantastic. It's not exactly like mopping up all your enemies, but I think it's in your additional loadout. I think it's like a good choice. I'm going to be putting it in the B+ category. I think there is definitely an argument to be made for like A-, but I think that's a bit high. We'll see. Maybe we'll move it throughout the tier list. Next, going into Orbital Airburst. Unfortunately, with the Airburst and with the changes they made to where the ships are positioned around the map, they are now in the cardinal directions. You'll sometimes get situations where like the Airburst strike will like do this massive oval because it's firing at such a low angle that it explodes in airburst and it just shoots projectiles like 50 to 75 meters downrange. And in that scenario, it becomes a lot less usable in my opinion. So personally, not a huge fan. I think it needs some love, either because of like ship positioning or just in general, just better, like just more damage or more projectiles. So maybe in those scenarios, it doesn't matter as much. Not a huge fan of it. Personally, I'm going to put it down in C tier. I genuinely think you're better off using a lot of other stuff. I might be being a bit harsh on it and it's like B- territory, but I think you're much better off with like a bunch of other stratagems in that slot instead. Okay, going on to the next one, we have Orbital Laser. Orbital Laser is a decent option, actually one of the better options I think overall on ILLUMINATE missions, at least personally in the random match-made games that I get into. The missions tend to just not be that long in general, so the 3 usage limit doesn't actually feel that impactful. And maybe this is just my perspective on ILLUMINATE missions as of late, but because we're not getting any Leviathan spawns currently, if you haven't noticed, they're just not spawning. I find that ILLUMINATE missions tend to not feel very high, you know, crazy like spawns the entire time. They are like kind of like up and down. The laser tends to be really good in those moments where like the entire ILLUMINATE fleet is on you and you just got to deal with them right now, and that really lends its hand of the Orbital Laser, and I don't feel like you'll like end up like needing more than 3 uses. And also because like the ILLUMINATE missions tend to be quite short because the objectives are very easy to complete, you really don't need more than 3 in a lot of scenarios, right? You might use 1 at the beginning just to get your footing. You might use 1 for the middle to deal with like a big, you know, ILLUMINATE drop, and then maybe another for the objective or the evac. But that feels like enough. And for that reason, I feel like it's probably like an A-, A+ territory. I'm going to put it more in A- just in case maybe you're taking longer than I am on average in your missions, and like 3 is just not enough for you. But at least in my games, I feel like it's somewhere in the middle of the 2. It's very useful. All right, next going to the Orbital Railcannon Strike. I can't recommend. It's just too long of a cooldown for what it necessarily does. Obviously, you can take out the occasional harvester or something like that, but you know, it's nothing crazy. Sorry, Luna is just pulling on cables behind my monitor, because of course she is, because I'm not giving her belly rubs. Good choice, but not a stellar choice for harvesters. But for the rest of the faction, I would not really recommend. Like, yeah, I guess you could use it against like the occasional flesh mob or stingray if you get like this really good positioning and it fires fast enough before it flies away. But overall, like, I cannot recommend. It's going to be somewhere in like C tier as well. You know, it can do something. It's just the overall cooldown is just far too long. Okay, next moving to our 120mm barrage. 120mm barrage, I think actually works really well on the Illuminate front. The 380 kind of feels like overkill a lot of the time, at least when I'm playing with it. And the cooldown being only 154 seconds with the modifiers on your ship feels really good. I don't always need that wide radius. I find Illuminate ship drops tend to be, much narrower in focus, and you kind of need more damage per second, which the 120 comes down faster. But obviously the projectiles are not as big. You don't have as much like pen and just overall damage explosion radius as the 380. But honestly, I think the 120 performs better overall in those scenarios. The 380 you'll miss for the really large Illuminate compounds, but overall I do think that the 120 can like be thrown on one side of that really large Illuminate compound, and then you just deal with the one Illuminate dropship that maybe didn't get destroyed or something along those lines. Yeah, so I'm gonna put like the 120 barrage like A+. I genuinely really enjoy this. Next, talking about the 380, I'm gonna put it lower. I'm gonna put it like on the the right side of the 120. I definitely enjoy the 120 more, but the 380 still has its like big power behind it. Fantastic for taking off shields and the occasional harvester, but it needs more direct impacts, which is not going to feel great. But it's really good against like flush mobs and like just the hordes of devastators, and it lasts longer, so you can kind of if there's a large horde coming towards you, you have that benefit. And like I said earlier, for the Illuminate compounds, really good. Okay, all right, Orbital Napalm Barrage. I think this is easily one of the best barrages you can bring on the Illuminate front. It just in general feels really good against like the entire force of Illuminate, outside of obviously Stingrays and Elevated Overseers, but even then the explosion can technically reach the Elevated Overseer at least. Fantastic, really highly recommend. Fire damage does affect harvesters. If you did not know, if they're stepping in fire, they will get lit on fire, and they are extremely weak to fire. If you've ever used the pyrotechnic grenade, you'll know they die very fast to both the projectile of the pyrotechnic and then the fire after that they're standing in. So very good, highly recommend. It is a great option for those on the front that are interested in just something of like throw and forget. Very good for that. Next, you have Walking Barrage. I don't find the linearity of the Walking Barrage to be that useful overall. I think that a lot of the times the Walking Barrage is just not necessary. That length of it is just, it's unused. You might use like maybe like 50 meters of it, but then it'll just go into like nowhere. And a lot of the ways that the Illuminate structures are laid out is you're usually in a circle. So the other barrages tend to just be kind of better. I'm sure you might get those situations where like an Illuminate drop happened, far in the distance, and they've been walking towards you for some amount of time, throwing it pretty close to you, and then having walking towards them. I get that, but you can just do that with the 380 in one spot, and they walk into the 380 over time. So personally, I think the Walking Barrage isn't as of a stellar choice as other options. It's not like on the bot front where, I feel like a lot of the fabricators and stuff like that line up in a linear fashion, or like bots just require that like more focus attack on like a convoy or something like that. It's not as useful. Orbital Precision is good, but not my favorite. I genuinely think it's still overshadowed much too much by like the 500 kg. Another one of those, it's nice to have, but I think there's better options on there. It's decent, it's good for like the occasional like group of flush mobs, or like a one-off harvester that you can actually direct impact with it, throwing it on top of a UFO and destroying it that way. Decent choice, but there are better ones out there. Next, going to our gas barrage. I think the gas barrage is fantastic. It just is really nice. As far as I know, it affects basically every single ground unit, even harvesters to some extent. It's a little bit inconclusive. Maybe you can tell me in the comments down below. I had a hard time really noticing if the gas is affecting a harvester. It seems like it is, but then sometimes it's like, is it just like some weird, like he's just taking his time before the next hit? It seems like it does. As far as all my gameplay, it shows that it does like get affected by gas, but there's some weird situations where it like, is it? I don't know. But for like flush mobs and overseers and voteless, fantastic against, especially like I said earlier, the narrow streets, it works really nice well. And it has the objective clearing capability of like, if you throw this on top of a UFO, it'll take out that UFO as well. It doesn't quite have that like throw and forget of the Orbital Napalm Barrage, but the usefulness of a very short cooldown gas strike, if used in the right context, is very useful. It's just sometimes sometimes there's going to be so many enemies that the gas strike just doesn't feel like it has enough range that the like orbital napalm barrage might have. But I could definitely see some people putting it in their S tier. Okay, next going into orbital EMS. You know, it's definitely improved. They have improved like the duration, and now the projectile itself can, you know, kill a UFO just like the gas strike. But I find myself not really enjoying the EMS strike still. I feel like it's something that I'm still in the camp of I would rather the enemy die than be stunned in front of me and I still have to deal with them. If I'm like comparing it directly to the gas strike, the orbital EMS needs more. Like it needs more radius, it needs like a shorter cooldown, so I'm kind of just using it very consistently. It just doesn't have enough uptime, and it's just like, why would I not just use gas strike? Gas strike is just kind of like the better of the two. EMS in general has been feeling like this ever since they've tuned gas strike or gas in general to be better. EMS just kind of fails to have a point because it needs to last longer or have a much shorter cooldown so you can use it more than gas. So until that happens, I still think it's like a C tier. I might be being a little bit kind, but I think it is fairly useful, arguably even more useful than the other ones in that category. Orbital smoke, I'm going to say the blanket statement of needs more gas. If it had more gas, or not my gas, more smoke. If it had more smoke, I think it would be more useful for like stealth or just like avoiding combat, or, you know, if you are in combat, you can get more distance away from the enemy. It's just, you don't really typically get that too much just because a lot of the time, like they're already engaged with you, and then the way the smoke lands, there's a bunch of gaps in between. If it was thicker and wider, I think it would be better, but just very I don't know. Not a huge fan. All right, going into our Eagles, we have Eagle Strafing Run to start off. Great for those city streets. I think it works really well for them. Can be a bit awkward at times versus a Harvester because their shield will, you know, eat up a decent amount of it. But I do like using it for softening up, you know, those hordes of enemies coming at us. I don't think it's like some like insane pick, but I do like it quite a bit versus Leviathans. This is the first time we've actually mentioned it because a lot of the other stratagems here aren't particularly great at dealing with Leviathans. Maybe if you're really good at positioning with the Gatling, you can do some insane things with the Gatling versus Leviathans. Maybe that'll push it into A-. We'll see. But I do like the Strafing Run quite a bit for just general mobbing, and it can be useful against the Leviathans if you get very good at like knowing the 45-degree angle and then like tracing the entire thing. I do like it quite a bit. I don't think it's some S tier stratagem, but I do like the overall usefulness of it. You're not taking out UFO straight up, but you can at least delete the shield pretty easily and save you some ammo. Okay, Cluster Bomb. Cluster Bomb has been kind of power crept over time, and it just continues to be power crept over time. Decent option for dealing with like flush mobs and overseers and, you know, obviously the hordes of voteless. You know, you're not doing too much more with that, but decent. I would prefer using the Strafing Run overall, but Cluster Bomb is a solid option if you want to just be doing something different, or if you want something wider, right? You don't have to be as precise with it. The Cluster Bomb definitely fits that niche more so. Okay, normal Airstrike, still like a solid A tier, right in the middle. You know, it hasn't really budged too much. Although you're only getting, you know, 3 uses out of it, they're very impactful, and they can absolutely take out flesh mobs and do a ton of damage to, you know, different objectives, and, you know, in general, just great for horde clearing. Sometimes you would rather have the linearity of the Airstrike, but sometimes the, you know, perpendicular nature of the side, left to right or right to left works out really nicely. So I'm gonna put it like somewhere like A+, A-. I think it's somewhere fits in the middle. I think for now we're gonna put it A-, but solid option. As always, another Eagle. Eagles just tend to fit in there. Okay, Eagle Napalm. I think this is definitely a very slept on stratagem still. I don't see many people use it, but it is arguably equally as good as Orbital Napalm Strike, if not even a little bit better at times, just because you have the ability to just use it on smaller groups and not feel like you're wasting a cooldown. And you can be more precise with it on individual groups of enemy, right? So say like the Orbital Napalm Barrage, you throw it down, but then maybe one of the Illuminate ships isn't quite in the radius. That sucks. Also, you might throw down Orbital Napalm Barrage a little too early or too late. The variability of the Eagle Airstrike of that, you can like throw one, hold on to the 3 others. Oh, I need another one. Throw another, throw another, throw another. You could have like at least almost a minute or so of pure fire, probably longer than a minute of pure fire right in front of you. Anything that walks into it is lighting on fire. Obviously, status effects are a bit weird, but I find Napalm Barrage and Eagle Napalm works quite well and are very consistent, lighting enemies on fire. And remember, the explosive effect of the Eagle Napalm, very good at like at least taking off the shields of objectives or outright killing some enemies. So definitely a slept on stratagem in my opinion. Eagle Smoke is definitely the better of the two because it just consistently lays out that line of smoke for you to get away from enemies or to avoid combat with them. Obviously, you can still take out objectives with it. If you guys didn't know, that is the same for Orbital Smoke, but Eagle Smoke does it more reliably and you get multiple uses of it, so it's better for taking out compounds, in my opinion. Okay, Eagle 110s, they're definitely better on the other fronts than I think people give them credit for, but on the Illumina front, I don't particularly like them. They're not particularly great for taking out harvesters, in my opinion. They have a stupendously hard time hitting any kind of like Leviathan or, you know, Stingray or anything like that. Yeah, they could technically take out a flesh mob, but it probably will take more than one just because the Eagle wingspan and like launching them, typically the rockets will land on either side of the flesh mob, not always direct impacting the flesh mob. So it's okay. I wouldn't recommend it too much, but it does have some decent anti-tank capabilities. If you take off the shield first of a harvester, it can do some decent damage and like weakening occasional flesh mobs with not too much accuracy needed because it aims itself. So yeah, decent, but not amazing. Okay, next we have Eagle 500 kg, a fan favorite of everyone out there. I'm sure of it. The crowd clearing potential of the Eagle 500 kg and the objective killing capability and just all the above is just so high for the 500 kg. It's just the, you know, some say like it's the jack of all trades, master of none, but it is kind of the master of a lot of different things. The only thing it typically doesn't really deal with is harvesters, just because of the way it deals its damage, and harvesters are pretty explosive resistant. It doesn't really deal with them that well, but it deals with everything else so effectively, like objectives and flesh mobs and overseers and just so much. It does a really great job, so it's easily a plus. I'm not going to put it as high as Eagle Napalm, and that might be a bit surprising to some, but I genuinely think Eagle Napalm is a slept on and honestly very high ranking alternative to the 500 kg. It's so, even versus harvesters, I can't stop raving about it. Okay, going into our backpacks, we are starting off with the energy shield. I think it's a great option for those that, you know, are tired of getting bullied a bit too much by flesh mobs. You know, obviously you are very ragdoll resistant. You just saw it in the little clip right there where a rocket directly impacted it. Didn't ragdoll the player, you know, so flesh mobs can rub up against you. You won't get ragdolled necessarily unless they get all the way inside of the bubble and then ragdoll you. You know, elevated overseers are going to be much less of a pain because you just have that shield. You can tank a little bit of time with the harvester laser as well, potentially survive a stingray strafing run, and if you are dealing with leviathans, if they come back, you can survive a shot of it. So I think there's a lot of like good uses for the shield pack, especially if you're someone who likes light armor and just doesn't like dying as much. I think it's a solid option. It doesn't have much offensive capabilities, but you know, if you find yourself dying a lot, great option just to keep yourself alive and reduce the number of respawns necessary for yourself in that mission. One of the more new additions is a direct energy shield. Decent spot on the Illumina front if you like one-handed weapons, especially the crossbow. Works well against your more ranged enemies on the Illumina front, and decent deem play can come about with it. Nothing to really call home about, but I think it's okay. You know, a lot of the Illumina front is either ranged and then the other half is melee. Obviously, it's going to do nothing against the melee enemies like the directional shield is, or the directional shield isn't going to deal with melee, whereas the shield generator is. Also, the shield generator you can use with any weapon, including a support weapon, whereas the directional shield is much more limited, but a good option if you tend to use one-handed weapons quite often. Another one that has gotten, you know, better over time, over the course of this game, is the ballistic shield. Decent even against melee enemies. You can use this to block melee damage. Just keep in mind that it will eventually break if it takes too much damage, and it is quite nice that it is actually kind of more useful than directional shield when it's on your back, because it kind of turns into like you know, a Ninja Turtle backpack, and it can protect you. It's kind of like the PUBG pan, as you will. So it can be decent for like when you're running away, you know, taking less chip damage, which is nice. It's nice to have, and which is why I'm actually going to put it a little bit higher than the directional shield, just a little bit, not much more, but I think it deserves a little bit of attention been appreciated more as of late. Okay, next we go to the supply backpack. I don't think this one is surprising for anyone. It's going to go instantly on the S tier. It just enables your team to be so much more supplied without needing to know where all the spawns are in the cities. I definitely got a lot of feedback when I originally put it in S tier, is that like the Illuminate cities just have so much ammo that you don't feel like you need it. But when you're using certain loadouts where you have small magazine counts, it works fantastic, especially for like heavy machine gun enjoyers. You can just lay down the fire so much more, and you don't have to worry about finding those 2 yellow bricks consistently, or like relying so much on the team resupply. It just pairs really well with that. And for that reason, all the way in the S tier, I don't think we're really surprised. It's insane. Okay, next going into our mobility options, we have the jetpack. The jump pack is always nice for Illuminate because there's not too much ranged ragdoll on the Illuminate front. I think it works quite well. You can also do some like decent jumping over walls and stuff like that if you get the right angle and you get the right height. Getting away from Illuminate can be fairly easy with this, especially when you're going downhill. But like most mobility options, it definitely depends on the player and how they utilize it versus another player. You know, you could just be really bad at finding uses for it and you might undervalue it, or you might be insanely good at finding uses for it and you might overvalue it compared to what I just put it kind of middle of the road because it kind of depends on the player. Fun option, but user dependent. Next, we have the newer hover pack. The hover pack is actually more favorited to me, honestly. I love being able to go over the walls very consistently and not have to worry about finding a little bit of high ground or something to jump off of. I also love the fact that like any of the melee enemies that get below me, I can just like go right up over top of them, you know, have a grenade to cook and throw at them, or a grenade launcher shot. It's good for like dodging the occasional flesh mob. You know, you can do some really fun things with it. And because city maps, or sorry, Illuminate maps are almost always colony maps, you can get the high ground of those buildings and stuff like that a lot of the time as well. There's a lot of high ground to take advantage of on those maps. So genuinely, I value it over the jump pack, but I'm going to put it right next to it because once again, depends on how you use it. Okay, next going to our latest mobility option, the warp pack. I genuinely think it's even a step above both of the options that we just said, just due to not taking your stamina. As long as you're timing it pretty well, it has a fantastic mobility option. It can do some decent amount of damage to enemies if you teleport on top of them. Careful if the enemy is too big, like a flesh mob. If you teleport inside of them, you go boop and you die, right? Immediately. So don't teleport inside the enemy, teleport next to the enemy so they take some damage. Just be careful. I'm gonna put it right up there in A-. Like I said, for the other mobility options, it depends how you use it. For me personally, it's probably an S tier, but I think in general, for most players, it's definitely better than the other mobility options overall if you get good with it, even getting into those bunkers occasionally. Just remember, if you're unable to get into a bunker, they didn't patch it. You just need to either like prone or crouch or find the right angle. I get a lot of people coming by my stream and saying, I can't get into the bunkers anymore. Is it bugged? Is it fixed? Did they fix it? No, they didn't. It's just some bunkers are a little awkward to get into. Change the stance, prone, crouch, diving into it while also teleporting works for some people. Get the right angle, it'll work for you. Just some you have to like finagle. Okay, next we have the portable Hellbomb. I don't see many people using it on this front. I just genuinely don't think it's that useful unless you're doing the specific type where you have to destroy the tower that if you touch it, you like turn into a voteless and you blow up. Unless you're doing that mission type specifically, I don't really recommend the portable Hellbomb. It just saves you some time so you don't have to, you know, fuff around with, you know, calling in the Hellbomb and, you know, typing in the code and it getting shot by an overseer or, you know, a harvester sniping you or, you know, those annoyances. It cuts down on that. So if that really is big for you, that'd be awesome. If you're someone who really likes like high kill count at the end of the game, it still is bugged. If it gets 1 kill, it counts as 2. So if you just want to show off to your friends that you killed a bunch of voteless, it'll give you multiple of that, right? It'll give you like, if this number, like you see how many voteless it's killing in that like scenario right there, it's probably giving them like 75 kills rather than like probably the closer to like 30, 40 that it should be. So yeah, if that's really big for you, I think it's really cool. I'm going to put it like B+. You know, it just depends on if you're doing the right type of mission. That's what I'm going to say. I don't think it's that useful overall, but it's decent. You know, if you have like good timing on like an Illuminate dropship, you know, coming in and you like place it right as they're all there, you can get kills, but you might as well maybe just throw a barrage at it. you know, you don't really need the Hellbomb for it, but it's fun. So there's that. Okay, now going into our guard dogs, starting off with my personal favorite for the Illuminate front, the aimbot guard dog, I like to call it. This thing is disgusting. Yes, you will see clips of it every once in a while, just missing a target completely, but more often than not, it's just like two-shotting, one-shotting the heads of a bunch of voteless and like absolutely destroying elevated overseers. If you hate elevated overseers, this is great. If you have trouble with even just like flush mobs, this will help a lot, right? It's just more firepower on that target. Works really well. Decent ammo supply. You can easily get like one brick, you know, occasionally to give you your reserves back. I really like it. Personally, I'm gonna put it all the way up in S tier. I think people need to use this more. It will make your mission far, far easier. It will feel night and day difference at times, and it will kill the occasional, you know, watcher sneaking up on you didn't get. It feels really good. Highly recommend. Okay, going to the Arc Dog. I really like for voteless killing, and it can stumble and stagger the occasional flesh mob. Just on flesh mobs tend to not get stunned once they're like running at you full speed. Like when they get into that enraged state, they tend to not get affected by like arc stun anymore, which is weird. Whereas like other things we're going to talk about on this tier list can still stun it. It's a bit odd. I'm not sure about that. But I will say, if you're playing Arc Dog, stay away from your team, please. This is for that person that likes to go lone wolf and go like play on one side of the map while your team is on the other. This thing just friendly fires way too easily. You just got to be careful of stuff like that, right? But if you are, you know, consistently playing off by yourself, this is a fantastic option. Very good killing potential, even better than the normal guard dog at times, but just the team killing potential of it goes down. I can't in good conscience put it like any higher than like A-. It's just too easily killing your teammates, but you have to stay away from your team to get proper usage out of this thing. Obviously, remember you can press the 5 key on keyboard or your down on the D-pad to get it to come onto your back. If you like, you know, let's say like a teammate has all of a sudden been called in next to you and he's hanging around you, you can just do that for those moments and then like redeploy it when you need them. But yeah, I like it overall. Just be careful. Next, Laser Guard Dog. Unfortunately, the Laser Guard Dog has lost some of its power more recently because they've changed how status effects work. They fixed the bug where like if you're in 4-player co-op, the status effects was applying 4 times versus a person playing solo with the same thing. They basically made it neutral. Now it doesn't matter, but there's a lot of inconsistencies still with like status effects. Sometimes enemies take a very long time or never get stead on fire. Not sure if that's a host bug or anything like that, but it's very inconsistent. I still think the Laser Guard Dog is fantastic for like pure uptime, and because the Illumina faction doesn't really benefit that much from having medium pen on your guard dog, you know, I think it's pretty good. It's not as like aimbot friendly or like really fast TTK of the regular guard dog, but I still think it's like a good option. It is slower on doing its damage, but if it got its fire killing ability back, I would probably be putting it like A+S, but it doesn't really have that. So I'm gonna I think I'm undervaluing it a little bit, but I'm gonna take into account that it's not gonna be super consistent on lighting things on fire. Okay, next we have the Gas Guard Dog. Fantastic. Really hard to argue against like how much CC it brings to the table. The range on it is quite low, but you know, I do really like using it versus like overseers and flesh mobs and just keeping voteless off of you. Just always a good option. The killing potential is lower, but keeping you alive potential is higher. I find that the guard dog, the regular AR guard dog, is a little bit better on the Illuminate front, but honestly the Gas Guard Dog is like right up there. If you're having trouble with like mobs just getting all over you and just unable to, you know, create space and just deal with like flush mobs, very good option for flush mobs and just keeping them off of you if you're having trouble killing them before they get to you. So highly recommend. Okay, next, going to a fan favorite of the Stalwart. Very fun option. Highly recommend the Stalwart if you don't play with it very often. You know, bring the guard dog, the AR guard dog, and then you have medium pen covered and you got this thing. The only thing the Stalwart really does suck against is like, obviously you can't do anything versus, you know, Leviathans, which is a bit unfortunate, and it can't do anything versus Stingrays, which is unfortunate, and it can do something versus Harvesters, but aiming at the eye to kill a Harvester is very inconsistent. There's going to be a lot of stuff that is going to try and stagger you and stop you from aiming at that eye, and in general it's just a very hard precision shot, especially when they're walking towards you. The eye is like floating around. It's in general hard to hit, but this thing is fantastic versus, you know, flesh mobs. It's fantastic versus overseers, fantastic versus, you know, voteless. Just remember, when you're shooting at overseers, A lot of people make the mistake of doing damage to their entire body, spreading the damage out. You want to pick one body part and shoot at that one body part. You break the carapace and then you shoot the like black underbelly, I guess you could say. But you could pick a leg, you could pick an arm, and then only aim at the head. If you have medium pen, then it's worthwhile for that. The Stalwart is, though, a very solid weapon. I would highly recommend using it. The only reason I'm putting an A- is just it's not very good against the Harvesters and not very good against the Stingrays, so you're going to have to find something else in your loadout to deal with those things. Next, we have the MG43. This one I absolutely love using. I'm not going to quite put it right in S tier. Obviously, it doesn't always perform the best versus like something like a Flesh Mob. Flesh Mobs have definitely brought it down a little bit from my initial ranking when, you know, Illuminate first came out, but I still think it's a fantastic option. Even for Flesh Mobs, it feels good. You know, you just have to dump a decent amount of ammo into them, and you probably want to pair it with something else like a guard dog or like gas or fire, nade or something like that to help you get it down faster. Great versus Harvesters. You do need to hold it on there and be decently accurate, but you know, good overall. You're not gonna be able to do anything against a Leviathan with it, but you know, assuming that it does very well against everything else, which is why I think it deserves to be A+. Okay, next, going to the heavy machine gun. I think the heavy machine gun, like I talk about in most of my tier lists for the heavy machine gun, is an investment focused stratagem. If you invest in it, it pays off big time. So if you bring the supply backpack, if you bring peak physique, it feels extremely good versus all these different enemies you're gonna run into. And with the heavy pen, you can start actually doing something against a a Leviathan that, you know, gets a wing knocked off and then you can shoot into it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot, but you need to invest in it. And because of that, I'm going to put it somewhere in A-. But if you invest in it, it can easily feel like S tier. It doesn't quite have enough ammo, and it can feel extremely sluggish on the Illuminate front without some investment. Bit unfortunate. But if you invest in it, it can feel so much better. Highly recommend. Okay, next we go to the AMR. Very good Harvester killer. Not the best versus Flesh Mobs. Probably wouldn't recommend using it. I'd bring something else in your loadout for it. Great for Harvesters. Pretty good for shooting into Leviathans if someone's knocked off the wing. Can take out, you know, the occasional Watcher coming up on you. It can take out Overseers that are flying at you. You know, if you're good at hitting the headshots, you can one-tap or like multiple shots, obviously to one body part if you want to go down that route. Fantastic option, but it's definitely a precision-oriented option. It's not really for someone who is struggling to hit their shot, so keep that in mind. Okay, now going into the newest offering in the support stratagem is a Speargun. This one really impressed me on the Illuminate front, way more than my initial testing really showed. I love this thing for both mobbing. It is essentially just 12, 13 gas grenades in your weapon, but also it has really good pen potential, so you can do damage to lots of enemies in a row, especially, you know, Flesh Mobs. And speaking of Flesh Mobs, you stagger them out of a charge. So if you absolutely hate dealing with Flesh Mobs when they charge at you, use the Speargun. It's really good. Not only will it stagger them, because it actually has quite a bit of stagger force, you know, even staggering a Ball Titan on the bug front, but it also has the gas, so the gas will affect them otherwise. Just do keep in mind, because of the overpen, it will typically fly through the Flesh Mob, then blow up behind it, so it might not be affected by the gas. Keep that in mind. You might want to shoot the ground below the Flesh Mob when you're trying to deal with them if you want to gas them. Another great one is that it can stagger the Harvester, and this is where I was like not 100% sure if it was the gas affecting the Harvester, but the Harvester tends to sit AFK for like an additional 5 seconds after you shoot them with the Speargun. I'm not sure if that's just a really delayed or like very long stagger animation, or if it's actually like the gas affecting them. Bit weird, but it actually plays out in your benefit, because if it's not mad at you and hasn't put up the shield yet, the first shot will stagger them. You can reload and then take a second shot at their arm. 2 shots is enough to take it out, just like the Railgun. So it becomes a really good Harvester killer if you're just coming across a Harvester that hasn't put its shield up. If it has put its shield up, obviously shoot the shield with another primary weapon of some kind, take it down, then swap to your Speargun and shoot the leg. The leg shot can be a bit difficult when it's walking towards you, but I think for the most part, it's not that bad. And if you get the first shot, you're most likely to get the second because you've staggered them. You can technically go for the eye or just like shoot them in the body, then they get staggered, then go for a double leg shot, which works as well. It's not one-shotting Stingrays, but it gets it like 90% of the way there. So shoot the Stingray, then swap to your primary weapon or some kind of medium pen weapon that you maybe brought, like a pistol, and you will finish them off. It can do damage to a Leviathan, obviously obviously not that much unless someone actually opens it up for you. And the gas is obviously not going to do that much to a Leviathan, if at all. So just keep it that way. Okay, so that being said, I've been having a hard time placing it. I think in some people's eyes, it will be S tier. In some people's eyes, it will be A+. I don't know which way I'm leaning overall. I think I'm going to be a bit controversial maybe, and I'll put it S tier. I think it's extremely good. Good ammo economy, good reload, tons of CC, very good against the vast majority of enemies you're going to run into. Yeah. I think it's like an S-, like it's teetering, but like I think it deserves to be more S tier than it does A+. So really fun. Highly recommend. Give it a try. Okay, next, going for the Railgun. I think the Railgun is B+, somewhere in that range. It's not particularly easy to use versus the majority of enemies in the game on that front. Decent damage versus flesh mobs. Obviously, it can do high potential damage per shot. It's just, can you get the freedom to do it? You don't get the stagger of the Speargun. Versus Overseers, you basically want to go for headshots. If you don't, it feels incredibly bad against them. Versus Harvesters, you obviously need something to take out the shield first and then go for the leg. Usually 2 shots to the leg, about the same as a spear. Good damage, decent. You can obviously one-shot Stingrays. You can do okay damage versus a Leviathan, especially if it's been opened up for you. But that being said, like, I probably wouldn't shoot at that many Leviathans. I'd probably bring something else if you're typically bringing out Leviathans. It's an okay option, you know, middle of the road, more or less, in my opinion, as long as you have good aim. If you're not having good aim, I would probably put this in like B- or C, but I'm going to assume that you can hit your shots, and I think it's okay. Okay, going for Grenade Launcher. I think it is a serious A+ contender. The only enemy that you're really not advised to shoot at is mostly Harvesters. They're just very explosive resistant when shooting at them. It's better now, but they're still so explosive resistant that I don't really recommend it versus them. But versus, you know, flesh mobs, really good versus them, really good versus Overseers for staggering and taking them out between, usually in like 1 to 2 shots. Tons of Voteless will die to you. I would definitely recommend bringing the supply backpack with it, but you don't always need it as long as you're like scavenging for ammo a fair bit. You can take out, you know, the different ships and objectives quite easily. You can take out Stingrays if you have a good enough lead on them. Obviously, you're not doing anything versus your Leviathans, but I do like the Grenade Launcher. I think a lot of people don't bring it enough, and then, you know, they have a tough time with flesh mobs. Great option. Okay, for the De-Escalator. Unfortunately, the De-Escalator has like lost quite a bit of like power as of late because they did fix the issue of it doing, you know, exponentially more damage with more players. I think they went too far. I think they should have found more middle ground. It feels a bit too bad at killing, like, you can even watch it in this clip, a bit too bad at just like killing basic, you know, Voteless and stuff like that. It can take out, you know, Harvesters fairly easily in like 5 shots to the leg, but at that point it's like, that's a lot. It can stun lock flesh mobs as long as they're not enraged. You can kill Stingrays with it, but it's not exactly easy, and it'll take a decent amount of shots. I just think in general they went a bit too hard with the bug fix, and they should have found better middle ground, honestly. And the De-Escalator is like C tier. I like, it's not, maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on it, but I do think they need to look at it now that they've fixed the bug in multiplayer. It feels a bit too similar, if not exactly similar, as to how it was in solo play beforehand. And it just genuinely did not feel good in solo play. Okay, next we have this Sterilizer. Honestly, a fun weapon to bring on like Illuminate, because you can basically just CC lock everything. You know, I think it works on Harvesters, but yeah, it's like, I feel like you're better off just bringing like Gas Guard Dog or gas anything. But I will put in a B- just because I do think that if you really don't want to bring those other options, you want to bring something else, it's decent, especially on those like flag missions or like, you know, tons of like flesh mobs and tons of like Voteless. It does perform really well, and even, you know, against a lot of Overseers, if you can get close enough to them, it feels good. It feels good-ish. But you're obviously gonna want to bring something for like Harvesters or Stingrays or, you know, Leviathans and stuff like that. Flamethrower is like B+. I think it's okay versus the Illuminate overall, like better than okay at times. It just kind of depends on what you have to deal with. Overseers in general can close the gap quite quickly, and elevated Overseers can make your life hell if you're trying to deal with them. You can take out Harvesters with the flamethrower. Just be careful of the electricity. So you might want to bring like electric resistant armor, or, you know, get really good at like trying to like get behind them when they're not looking at you. Yeah, it can absolutely cook them, but it's just harder to use. I do genuinely like lighting the floor on fire, backing up, lighting the floor on fire, backing up. It does work quite well against squids in that regard, but the range factor I think plays into why I won't put it any higher, mostly. Laser cannon, solid A tier. You know, it is losing a little bit of power because of can't light flesh mobs on fire as effectively, but it still feels really nice against, you know, overseers and taking out harvesters and taking out stingrays. It can do okay damage versus an opened up Leviathan, you know, not needing to reload and just have unlimited ammo. Great. You know, I'm not really rooting for people to use it versus Voltless, but you can. Just a solid option. I really like using it with the shield as well. Good, solid, would recommend. Okay, Quasar. Some people absolutely love bringing this thing. I don't really recommend bringing AT all that much on the Illuminate front unless you're dealing with the Leviathan. And if you're dealing with Leviathan, I wouldn't really recommend bringing the Quasar. I think it's decent if you just want to take out harvesters and do some amount of damage to a flesh mob, but it's not particularly great at killing a flesh mob. It's pretty good at killing harvesters. Obviously, like the long charge up can be a little bit frustrating when you're dealing with a rechargeable shield, and then taking out stingrays, good. And dealing with Leviathans, not fast enough. It's the recharge time is just too slow for the damage it deals. 50% of the damage are recoilless. Recoilless can reload immediately. Yeah, you got to resupply it, but that's not a huge ask when you're taking out a Leviathan all by yourself with that weapon. So it's okay. All right, next going to the Arc Thrower. I think the Arc Thrower fits somewhere in like the A- to A+ territory. I'm going to put it closer to A+ just because I do like the fact that it can CC harvesters. Not great at killing them, but at least can CC them very well. Flesh mobs, it's pretty good against, but once they're enraged, it's really hard to stop them from being enraged with the Arc Thrower. I think eventually you can stun lock them, but it takes a lot of build up on them. It's predominantly very good against, you know, the CC of the harvester, like I said, and dealing with overseers and voteless. And for that reason, I do think it's really nice and has the unlimited ammo. Careful, please don't kill your teammates, but the linearity of like the city maps and the colony maps works in its favor quite well. There's not too much clutter and debris in the way. It's a good weapon. Solid. Good. All right, the Epoch, a pretty contentious one, I want to say, for many players. A lot of people are, I think, thinking of when it first came out and it was super inaccurate, but I think with enough practice, it's actually a really strong option at times on Illuminate. I think it's probably the weakest overall faction for the Epoch. I definitely think it like shines really brightly on the bugs and bots, but on Illuminate, it can kind of have a little bit harder time. But so, to talk about some of the breakpoints, it can two-shot flesh mobs, and if two of them are standing close enough together, it can kill two at the same time. One strategy I would immediately recommend is take one shot and then use something else like your coyote or your primary weapon to finish off the last 20% of their health or so. It can take out harvesters fairly effectively. I wouldn't recommend shooting the shield with it, but it can one-shot their arms. You know, I would aim around there. You want a direct impact with it. 2 shots at worst. I wouldn't always recommend it on overseers, but if you can find a clump of them, it feels really nice against them and voteless. It can take out stingrays in one shot, so keep that in mind. And it can do some okay damage to a Leviathan, especially if you've opened it up. So yeah, I do think it's like a good weapon. It's somewhere between A-, A+. I think because of like how hard it is to use at times on the Illuminate, and just in general, like the usability of it is kind of on the lower side, just because it takes a lot of practice to get there. The skill floor is quite high and the skill ceiling is quite high, but because the skill floor is so high, I'm not going to always recommend it to everyone, but if you can get good with it, it can start to feel like an S-tier stratagem. Trust me. Okay, the absolute GOAT of the game, as always, is the Autocannon. Feels great on Illuminate. Highly recommend the flak rounds for the flesh mobs. On average, like 3 shots or so to take them out. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on how it explodes on them. You can take out stingers really well. You can take out the overseers quite well with flak. Wouldn't recommend it too much versus Volus, but it can take out the flak pretty well in the flak mode as well. Yeah, just a good option overall. Obviously, you're not really going to be taking out Leviathans all that much, but in the current context, they're not even spawning. So it is what it is. It's going to go all the way up into S tier. I think it's a really really good option. Yes, you lose out on the backpack, but I think for the right player, you don't need the backpack. And then just the usability of the flak rounds is so high, you'll be just getting a stupid amount of kills. And I would recommend, if you're dealing with a harvester though, change to the armor piercing rounds and just go for the legs. I wouldn't really recommend the flak rounds. They're very unreliable versus them, because it more or less depends on how the flak is hitting the leg. Are you getting lucky and shotgunning it, or are you getting unlucky and it's missing? So keep that in mind. Okay, Airburst rocket launcher is next. This one is a bit of a tough one to talk about, just because I think in the right hands it can actually be a very successful weapon on the Illuminate front, just because a lot of enemies are susceptible to their rounds, and it's definitely skill oriented. And as far as like, can you put in a cluster rounds, aim it at a 45-degree angle, you can visualize where it's going to blow up, where the rounds are going to land. Definitely players of that caliber will value it a lot more versus a player that just keeps it on the flak round, shoots it a little too close to the enemy, kills their entire team. There's like a huge difference in how good you are at using the Airburst. And I think that for that reason, I'm gonna put it in B+. I don't think I can, like, in good conscience put it higher unless you are just a very good player with it. It can be like the Epoch and have like a very high skill ceiling, but the skill floor on it is actually even higher than the Epoch, because you're not going to get much uses out of it unless you know where to use it and when to use it. Like when to use flak for the longer range, when to use cluster for the shorter range, what the trajectory is. Like, it's even hard for me to explain it, because you kind of need to pick it up and use it, and then you'll learn how to use it, when to use it over time. But it is very good for killing patrols, at least, and it is fairly consistent and easy to do if you're like, you're not overwhelmed by enemies. You see a distant bunch of flesh mobs, send a flak round at them, you'll probably kill at least the majority of them, which is pretty cool. Okay, next, as AT potential goes, I think the Commando is actually like pretty damn highly rated, because it can one tap a harvester's leg if you get pretty damn good at aiming at it. Wouldn't recommend the tech of like pinging them and then firing it, because they'll just hit their main body. You want to aim into the leg, so you can potentially kill 4 harvesters per call-in, which is pretty cool. You can do some decent damage to flesh mobs. Wouldn't really recommend it. You can do some okay damage versus a Leviathan as far as like team shooting. Wouldn't really recommend it, but decent. But I think it's mostly there for just being so good at killing harvesters if you can hit that leg. So highly recommend if you're looking for something in your loadout as an additional stratagem to take them out. EATs, not as favorable to the Commando, because obviously when you call it in, although it has a shorter cooldown, you're only getting 2 per call-in, and you can only carry around 1. And it's a bit overkill when it comes to dealing with harvesters, but I will say it is better versus your occasional Leviathan, just because of the shorter cooldown. You can take out some wings. If you're doing like a defense mission, you can call in a bunch and then just keep hot swapping to another and another, which is decent. But I think the general mobbing of Illuminate definitely drags it down. Okay, a new addition to the tier list is the Napalm EAT. The expendable Napalm is very fun to use, highly recommend, and I'm going to be placing this quite high. It just feels very nice to use if you can get some good spreads, and it essentially is like an Eagle Napalm, but a little bit harder to use at times, just because you got to get a good angle and a good spread on it. It can sometimes be a bit unwieldy on how it separates its shells. Sometimes all the shells could like land and like separate in one small area, but sometimes it could be a much larger area. So keeping that in mind, I think it's like absolutely like bottom of A+. Definitely recommend. Longer cooldown, but great for those Illuminate drops or like large patrols and stuff like that. I'm not going to be shooting this at like larger tier enemies, but like I could see someone getting some like crazy one shot on like on a Stingray, or potentially finding some crazy spot on like a harvester leg where you can one shot it, because it is medium pen when it explodes. But even if the harvester is just walking through the fire, it's doing good damage versus it. If you haven't given it a try, I would recommend. It's very fun. Okay, going to the ultimate Leviathan killer, it is the Recoilless. The Recoilless is going to be high on the tier list purely because of how effective it is versus Leviathan. It's not particularly amazing versus flesh mobs. You can technically put on the HE rounds. It takes 2 shots to kill them. It can obviously one-shot a harvester, but it feels a bit overkill. It genuinely does. I'm going to put it in A-, but just keep in mind that it is definitely, if not the best thing to just throw at a Leviathan. All 6 shots of its ammo takes out Leviathan. You don't even have to be accurate. Aim somewhere on it and it can take it out. You can be more efficient and just take 4 shots and take out a front wing, or take out both front wings, like 2 and 2. And then at that point, it can't shoot at you anymore. So it's essentially like a mobility kill, and it'll just fly off the map, but it will stop shooting at you. It'll throw down bombs at you, but it's like you probably never died to those bubble bombs before. Just keep that in mind though. As far as like general, like how good is it on the Illuminate, it gets a lot of down ranking because it's not particularly great on like an average Illuminate mission. But let's say you have Leviathans active, way higher, arguably S tier. Okay, a fan favorite is next, the W.A.S.P launcher that came with Killzone update. Really fun to use on the Illuminate, especially if someone doesn't want to aim. Just take 1 shot at a time for every overseer, on average 3 shots for a flesh mob. Not particularly amazing versus harvesters unless you get the good angle and it like direct impacts the leg. It can do some okay chip damage versus a harvester, but it's not particularly like amazing at it. But yeah, I do like using it. Great for anti-air versus stingrays. Good option. Fantastic option, honestly. I'm going to put it right up there in A+. I don't think it quite deserves to be an S tier just because the finickiness of using it versus harvesters, and if an enemy is too close to you, it's like very unwieldy and it will just fly over their head. And also depending on the overseer, sometimes they're moving slightly too fast and it'll like track to them and miss. So there's just some variability in how good it is at times, which is why I won't necessarily put an S tier, but I think it's solid. Next, for the spear, I know there's a lot of spear enjoyers out there, but my problem with the spear is that it basically only has one job on the Illuminate front. The spear one-shots harvesters now, which is nice, but that's basically all I would shoot at other than a Leviathan. And for a Leviathan, it can't kill Leviathan with just its ammo. It needs one additional rocket on top of that. It's very easy to use, which is great, but you will need to take out the shield of a harvester. Just keep that in mind. It's okay. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B+, just because it's like pretty good versus harvesters, just because you don't really have to aim. Just take out the shield first. And it's pretty good versus Leviathans. One of the better options, but you do need that additional rocket to kill them. So just keep that in mind. Okay, next we have the Super Earth Flag. This one is going in D tier for democracy. I don't think anyone is surprised to see that. It's mostly just a cosmetic item for RPing and stuff like that. If that's your thing or you just like meleeing voteless with it, sick. But I'll leave that to you guys. All right, the Solar Silo. This one is a bit weird. I feel like super accurately put it anywhere because I feel like it will be pretty good against Leviathans, sniping them at long range, but I haven't been able to test it because Leviathans aren't spawning on Illuminate missions. I'm going to take a wild guess and assume that it's probably dealing with it in 2 to 3 silos, potentially because it was so good versus the Factory Shredder, like multi-hitting and just doing a good amount of damage to the weak points, one-shotting them. I'm assuming it's probably going to take 2, so maybe you and a teammate can coordinate taking them out. Could be really interesting. As far as like dealing with like Illuminate in general, it's all right. It's pretty good. I don't think it's like terrible or anything like that. Just keep in mind, like one voteless can like really annoy you because he will be aggro to your solo silo rather than you, which is very annoying. So if you're going to use this, use it like an EAT. And I'm on purpose going to put it next to the EAT for now because you definitely want to throw it down and use it pretty immediately. It's just so often like a random voteless will come out of nowhere and attack it. But I could see it potentially being pretty damn good against Leviathans. I just haven't been able to actually test it. If it is like 2-shotting a Leviathan, I could see myself putting an A- with some decent team coordination, or like, you know, very distant Leviathan, shoot one, wait for the cooldown to come back. You know, it's not that long of a cooldown, and then shooting it again, or just having a teammate that also brings it. I could see that. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be bringing this on like a regular basis. It's a decent option, but nothing to really call home about. Okay, next, going into our turrets, we have the very trustworthy Machine Gun Sentry. Absolutely love this thing on the Illuminate front. You're not taking your harvesters, and it's mostly just taking out like your smaller tier enemies, and it can do some decent damage versus a flesh mob, but I'm not going to put it any higher than A+, just because it's not dealing with like a harvester, and it's not that good at dealing with a flesh mob. But I love bringing this just for the short cooldown. It's very useful. Great thing to just like kind of fit into your loadout if you feel like you just need some more killing potential, but you don't need like Gatling level of like reuse and just like in one spot. you just gotta be really careful. Okay, going to the Gatling Sentry. The Gatling Sentry is definitely more for like defensive positions and someone who doesn't play as aggressive, whereas the Machine Gun Sentry feels like you can use it more aggressively on Illuminate front, especially since it has a lower cooldown. You know, you're looking at like 77 seconds versus 128. If you lose a Machine Gun Sentry, it's not as like impactful, versus if you place a Gatling Sentry poorly and it gets destroyed very fast, it'll feel more impactful. But I will be putting it right next to the Machine Gun Sentry, another good option for the Illuminate front, very good for horde clearing up to a Harvester. It's a little bit better versus flesh mobs just because of like raw damage per second, but because of the longer cooldown, it more or less equals out to what the Machine Gun Sentry can do. Okay, the Flame Sentry, an unfortunate one that I wish was better, but particularly isn't that great. It just doesn't have that much range, doesn't really have any stagger. It's good versus voteless, but any turret is relatively good against voteless, so I can't really give it brownie points or anything like that. I think I'm probably going to put it in B-. I think if it did more damage per second and it had more range, or it had some kind of pushback effect versus like flesh mobs and stuff like that, I could think it could be better. If you put it in a good spot where maybe enemies can't touch it on like a defensive mission, I could see it being better, but in general, pretty meh. Another new one is the Laser Sentry. I think it kind of suffers from very similar things that the Flame Sentry runs into, other than range. But for this one, it's how much ammo it has, how much fire time it has before it blows up. It's just too little. It can barely take out like a patrol in front of it. And honestly, if it's like 2 flesh mobs, it's not taking out that patrol. It can do decent damage versus harvesters, and it can do decent damage versus like overseers and stuff like that. But it's just like, it's just so often wants to fire at voteless. And if it doesn't fire at voteless, it gets overwhelmed. And it's just not even good against killing voteless. I just don't recommend it. It's another like C, B- tier, in my opinion. I think it's like maybe it's around the same as Flamethrower. I don't think it's C tier. I don't think it's that bad, but it's not particularly great. I wouldn't really recommend it on the higher difficulties. I could see people on lower difficulties enjoying it more, where it doesn't have so many targets to shoot at, so it doesn't overheat as fast. Okay, my next turret is going to be Rocket Sentry. As long as you can keep voteless away from it, easy A+ tier. Very good at killing flesh mobs at great distance, very good at killing like stingrays, very good at killing harvesters, even decent at killing voteless, because it can get more than 1 kill at a time. It just needs to be placed with some thought and care, and it needs to be slightly protected from voteless getting too close to it. But it has fantastic ammo economy, does great damage per second, actually pretty damn good at dealing with and helping deal with Leviathans. Doesn't have crazy range or anything like that for them, but it can do some additive damage to it. Would recommend if you just need some turret capabilities on your Illuminate front. Next, we have the Autocannon Sentry. Has a hard time existing, even though it will deal with like flesh mobs better. I don't think the ammo economy is nearly as good. And because of the rotation speed being so slow, it can't really protect itself as good. Lower range as well means that it's not going to be as good versus Leviathans and Harvesters and stuff like that. So it could get outranged by some of these potential enemies. Still good AoE potential, but it more or less will overkill a lot of the enemies it shoots at. It's just in an awkward position overall. Okay, next going to EMS Mortar Sentry. Decent option for like city environments, you know, because of the top-down attack, stunning a bunch of Illuminate forces, or just keeping patrols away from you. It's pretty good. Ammo economy, very good. But like I say with most situations with EMS, probably better just to outright kill it. And because the aggressive mortar, the regular explosive mortar, has just been getting power crept slowly over time, I don't even really recommend the Mortar Sentry unless you're doing a defensive mission. A lot of people, if they see you bring the Mortar Sentry, may just kick you. They shouldn't be doing that. They should probably just talk to you, or like you should just be very aware of like pinging and keeping it away from teammates. But it doesn't feel that good versus Illuminate forces. If you can ping targets or constantly do defensive missions, I would put it higher, but I don't think it's that good. I think the EMS Sentry is more or less B tier just because it has a decent amount of like utility for your team, and it doesn't have the team killing potential, but the team killing potential of the mortar on Illuminates is very high because of all the voteless. So I'm going to be putting the mortar decently low on the tier list for that. I do think if you're bringing on a defensive mission, it performs a lot better. So it's not going to be C tier for that reason. The emplacement, we have the HMG emplacement. It is fantastic. fantastic on the Illumina front. This thing is a destroyer of harvesters. Just make sure to kill them before they kill you. Fantastic against an opened up Leviathan. You need someone to help you with the wing, unfortunately, though. You can bring dual EATs and shoot one of the back wings. There is a video on my channel if you're wondering, how do I kill Leviathans when they return? You can check out that on the channel. HMG is a very fun weapon to use. Very good against Overseers. If you shoot them in the head, they can get 1 tap, 2 tapped. Decent against your flesh mobs. Not exactly what I would recommend shooting at because it can be pretty pricey on the ammo, but like very good versus, you know, stingrays and harvesters and overseers. Yeah, would recommend. I'm going to be putting this all the way up in A+ tier. It's going to be on the lower end of A+ just because you are very vulnerable when you're on it. So if you don't have a guard dog supporting you with dealing with like voteless and stuff like that, it can be kind of scary. Also, the occasional harvester may just 1-tap you, so be careful with that. But if you put it in the right situation, this thing goes crazy. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Okay, anti-tank emplacement is a bit of a difficult one to place, just like the recoilless. If you're on a harvester map, or a harvester map does apply. A harvester map, more likely a Leviathan map, the anti-tank emplacement is insane. You can easily take out 2 Leviathans for 1 anti-tank. And while you're using it, you can take out flesh mobs because there's explosive damage, does damn well against them. And you can like 1-tap a harvester. As long as the shield's down, you can 1-tap them in the leg, obviously. Would recommend the anti-tank emplacement. I do think it is a good option, just it shines a lot brighter versus Illuminate if you have the Leviathans around. If you are fighting the Leviathans, I think it's easily like S tier, A+. But if you're not fighting Leviathans, I think it's like not as good as the machine gun sentry. I still think it's a good option, but you are definitely more susceptible to voteless, which is why I'm putting it lower. But don't scoff at it for just dealing with like occasional like flesh mobs or overseers or stingrays or even harvesters. I do think like it is actually better than they make it look in that image. Just don't do what this person is doing and shooting like the eye. Go for the leg weak spot. This person is making it look a lot worse than it actually is. Okay, Tesla Tower. I'm gonna put it A-. It is technically a little bit better than that, but a lot of players are going to put this in city streets. People are going to go around a corner and they're going to get zapped by it, and it has a very high team killing potential. It is nice as like a distraction when you can throw it in the middle of a illuminate drop and it just keeps zapping things. It's very nice for that. It's not really taking out harvesters. It is stunning them if it can take out the shield first. It's okay versus flesh mobs, but I don't really recommend it versus them. I would almost always pair it with like gas mines if I'm doing a defensive mission. So you put the gas mines down and then you put the Tesla Tower in the middle. So if anyone tries to run at the Tesla Tower, they at least get gassed first, which is a pretty cool combo, but it takes some like synergy. Decent option, high killing team potential. Just make sure to communicate with your teammates. But if you can, or at least destroy it when you're done with it, I think it is an A- tier stratagem. Next, we have the grenade launcher emplacement, the Grenadier battlement. Definitely a slept on stratagem. This thing is fantastic, like S tier for defensive missions, and it actually, if posted up pretty well against Illuminate forces, it's really good against overseers, voteless, and flesh mobs. It basically just tickles to death a harvester because they're just so explosive resistant. But man, does this thing have such a short cooldown for how much killing potential it has versus hordes of Illuminate. Place this thing in a street, long corridor, just lob shells at all those voteless and flesh mobs and those overseers, and they will evaporate. You will want to bring something to deal with the occasional harvester that shows up, but if you bring this, I genuinely think you will have a great time. It might be a bit controversial, but I am going to be putting it right next to the HMG emplacement. I think it's that good. Where the HMG emplacement is good at certain things, it kind of sucks versus certain things. And where the HMG sentry is kind of bad, the Grenadier like definitely shines. And then where the HMG sentry is like really good, the Grenadier sentry is not very good at or bad at, right? Can't even do anything against Leviathan. Very fun to use. Highly recommend. A lot of people don't use it. It's a lot better than people think. Okay, going to the mines. I'm going to put anti-personnel mines all the way in D tier. You are most likely just going to kill your teammates. I was playing it today, like literally right before this, and yeah, someone just started using anti-personnel mines, doesn't mark where they are. They placed it like 3 minutes prior. I'm walking through the field. It's in a giant grass pile, I die. Like, it's so annoying. And like, even in like the cities where like, you know, they're pretty easy to spot, I don't think it's like that particularly good. I don't know. It has too high of a team killing potential that I just don't want to put any higher. I'm a little salty because of that game today. So maybe it is closer to C tier and not D tier, but like, ugh. And then for those that are like shouting for the, but it's at least good on defensive missions. The issue with that is that more often than not, you're going to throw them down and then your teammate's going to throw a stratagem that blows them up all up anyway. So it's a wasted stratagem slot. It happens so often. And at least with the fire incendiary mines, like at least the fire sticks around longer, right? Like if they do get blown up by your teammate, like the fire is still there to at least do something after that happens. But so often these mines are just deep in the sand or snow or like in a grass pile and you're just not going to notice them. If they were more noticeable, I like that like they're more usable and they've been buffing them over time and they spread farther apart so they don't chain explode as much. Man, do they need to be easier to spot? I just keep saying it. They need to be easier to spot, man. They're just so frustrating. Okay, gas mines. I'm going to be putting this in like A-. I think it's almost A+. I really like using it versus Illuminate drops. These mines are very contrary to the other mines just because if your teammate steps on them, it's just gas. They have more than enough time to just stim or even walk out of the gas kill out. And honestly, the gas tends to be more impactful than these other mines. I gotta say, it tends to be better overall. Like it just is. I think gas mines are really great CC. They don't always have the best killing potential. Normal gas strike is just overall better versus Illuminate, but it's really nice. It's really nice to use. You know, you see that flare go up from a watcher, throw mines right on top of them and just like, or like the street in front and just let them come through. It works really well. Highly recommend in that situation. Anti-tank mines are a bit of a mixed bag. I think they can be particularly good and then at other times they can be particularly bad. Harvesters are very unlikely to step on the AT mine. They are fairly good against flesh mobs, but not amazing. I'm going to put it more like middle B just because they're only really particularly good against flesh mobs. And even then I would rather just bring gas because at least it affects more enemy types than just flesh mobs. Maybe if like harvesters more reliably activated them, I would put it higher, but it just kind of doesn't. At least it doesn't have the team killing potential as much. You'll still get into situations where like an enemy will shoot next to you, miss, hit the AT mine, you're dead, or your teammate throws like a grenade near you and it misses you, but it activates the AT mine next to you. Still frustrating. I have always said that a cool ship module upgrade that could always be done is like if your Helldiver got like some kind of like controller on them and as they walk close to a mine, if they're within 10 meters, it shuts off the mine. And then when they move on, it turns it back on. That'd be such a cool kind of like stratagem of some kind. I'd really enjoy something like that. It would be really interesting and neat. And I feel like it would kind of move into like that science fictions type of like stratagem also, like mines not being just pressure plated. They'd be actually like be able to be like communicated with, but I don't know. Maybe that's too far-fetched. Okay, next we have the shield. Shield's okay. I'm going to put it middle of the tier list. It's okay. It can protect you from a decent amount of fire from like harvesters and overseers and leviathans bullying, but it's nothing like insane. The short cooldown is like relatively nice, but in most situations, it's probably just better that you have something that kills the enemy that's dealing with you rather than just protect yourself. But on defensive missions, I can easily see someone using this alongside their anti-tank emplacements and stuff like that. Or like if you're fighting a lot of leviathans, anti-tank emplacement plus this, decent. Be careful, like this can work against you if you get pushed out of the bubble and then the enemy forces are using the bubble, but not a bad choice. I don't think it's middle of the road. I think there's some utility to it. And I think people mostly will just prefer to go for something that's actually like aggressive. Okay, next our two mechs. We have the Patriot. I think the Patriot is better than a lot of stratagems just because you can kind of blitz missions and the machine gun sentry or the machine gun arm on it is like fairly good. The rocket is still very disappointing. Please give it EAT or recoilless like damage. It shouldn't be doing so little damage. It's such a big rocket. And like in general, it just gets outclassed so easily by the Emancipator mech. That being said, the Emancipator mech goes all the way up to S tier. I know that sounds crazy, but give it a try. The Emancipator mech is insane for horde clearing. Very good at flesh mobs because of explosive damage. Very good at general mobbing. Very good at killing harvesters. Just be careful of their laser. Very good at like rushing objectives. Great mobility. It can take out a Leviathan all by itself. It takes a lot of its ammo, obviously, but it can do it. Just make sure to like aim for like one of the back wings and then shoot into the wing, because once you break the wing, you're going to be doing 35% more damage. Yeah. It's really good. It's a very good mech, especially if the DSS is active on that planet. Highly recommend. Okay, another top tier one is the FRV. I love the FRV for Illuminate missions. You can absolutely blitz through an Illuminate mission quite easily. The cities and the colony maps that you're almost always going to get for Illuminate missions make it very easy. Just be careful of Leviathans. If Leviathans are on the mission, be careful. They will wreck you up. Now, they have made Leviathan Cannon not do as much damage to vehicles, but it's still very scary for you and your crew if they're in it, but really good for just driving around, grabbing super samples and super credits from yellow ping locations. Very good for like driving to the next objective. You can easily drive away from a lot of forces. There isn't much at all ragdoll on the Illuminate front, so you can just kind of like drive through fire with the FRV. I do recommend it overall. Like I think it is very easy to use because so much of the map tends to just be city, and the cities are very easy to, you know, manage with the FRV. That being said, maybe it's a little bit lower. I'm going to quickly like place that more to middle A because you can get a decent amount of free FRVs from side objectives on the Illuminate front. And I almost forgot about that. So I'm going to put it a little bit lower. It's more towards like middle A, but it is very useful to have a teammate that likes driving FRV around just to get away from those Illuminate bot drops, so you don't have to deal with them. You can just get onto the next objective. Okay, so that's our placement so far. Let me see if I want to change anything. The Napalm EAT is like middle A. I think I'm going to put the laser cannon a little bit lower and the arc thrower down there as well. I don't think they're as high in that situation. I do really like the laser cannon. I'm still very happy with our S tiers. I would highly recommend anything in S tier. There's a bunch of really good A tiers. I'm going to put honestly the W.A.S.P higher and the machine gun a little bit higher in A tier. Is there anything I feel like is being underutilized? I'm going to put the Stalwart a little bit higher. I would recommend. I think I was being a little harsh on the laser guard dog. I will put that a little higher as well. Let's see here. Anything else? I think I'm pretty happy with a lot of stuff. I'm definitely being pretty kind to the ballistic shield, but I do think it kind of deserves it. I think I was a bit too kind to the shield generator. I'm going to put that in B-. It's just not getting much use. That being said, the Gatling barrage is better. I didn't value it enough for anti-Leviathan. If you get good at understanding which ship is yours and knowing the trajectory, you can actually annihilate Leviathans with it, but it's definitely a high skill ceiling kind of situation, so keep that in mind. I'm going to put the laser sentry a little bit lower. I don't think it is that good. I'm going to put Airburst a little bit higher. I think I was being a little bit too harsh on it. I do think it's better than C. Still a little salty about mines. I'm going to keep them down there. You can't stop me. Just keep in mind solo silo could be higher depending on how good it is versus Leviathans. Just not sure about that one until we can test it. I think I'm quite happy. Epoch, I'm going to put it to closer A-, a little bit higher. I'm still not putting it higher just because of usability. If they do make changes to it, I will put it higher, but in this current state, it is pretty hard to use. The skill floor is pretty high, so not always easy. I think I'm happy. So let me know what you guys think of the tier list overall. I'm pretty happy with where things are landing, but let me know what your S tiers are. Let me know if I'm underutilizing something or if I'm overutilizing or over complimenting something. Just let me know. I'm very curious both in the comments and come on by the stream. If you guys are curious about the YouTube live stream, we are currently setting up that channel. It is Maplewood_TV on YouTube. It'll be a secondary channel for my live stream just because I was noticing that our YouTube live stream, as soon as I stopped streaming on it, the videos started getting shared to so many more people and so many more views came in. So yeah, not sure what's up with that, but do consider subscribing to Maplewood_TV. We will be streaming on there very momentarily. Just looking to get it all finished, set it up, almost done, like almost there. Consider joining the Discord down below if you're looking to find some more Helldivers like yourself, and come on by the stream. Talk to me about the tier list. I love talking about this stuff. People come by all the time and like, I don't quite agree with this placement. I would have preferred it there. What are your thoughts on this? I prefer this one there. I love these conversations. Please come on by. They're super fun. Much love, YouTube. Peace out. Bye.